Gentlemen, have you ever known another dude, maybe a coworker or someone in your social circle, who in your estimation at least didn't exactly stand out genetically or certainly financially, yet for some crazy reason, all the women were drawn to him like moths to a flame, saying in hushed tones, "Oh, there's just something about that guy." Well, if you're listening to this particular podcast episode within a few days of its release, I want to invite you to this upcoming Wednesday's masterclass called Charm and Charisma, because those two factors are the secrets to being, quote, "there's just something about that guy," to the women out there. Few men capture this, but it's all about what you know and how you apply it, and all the secrets to being a man who's charming and charismatic are going to be spilled at this masterclass. This is going to be a popular event, so get your tickets before they're sold out at mountaintoppodcast.com/masterclass. Charm and Charisma, coming this Wednesday, January 29th, 2025, just for you at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's GMT -5. Once again, get your tickets for the Charm and Charisma Masterclass at mountaintoppodcast.com/masterclass. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode. It's a lot of fun.
Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scott McKay.
Oh, how's it going, gentlemen? Welcome to yet another episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. I am your host, Scott McKay from X and Y Communications, and today we're going to talk about a topic that I would say the vast majority of women on Earth think a vast majority of us as men are terrible at. Now, you may disagree, but it may just prove our point today. We're going to talk about the art of listening, and my guest is a new guest who I'm just getting to know. He's a good guy. You're going to love him immediately. And before I introduce him to you, I want to remind you that you can find me on X, on Truth Social, on TikTok. Yes, it's still there. God help us all. And YouTube at Scott McKay, SCOTMCKAY. And you can also find me on Instagram and on Threads at Real Scott McKay. If you haven't joined the Facebook group, it's called the Mountaintop Summit. We're looking for you there. The website is mountaintoppodcast.com. Now, listen, gentlemen, when you go to mountaintoppodcast.com, there's a lot of free goodies for you there. You'll be happy you showed up. And when you get on my free newsletter, every day I'm going to write you fluff-free content that helps you to be better as a man and, of course, better with women. Without anything further, my first-time guest today is a gentleman who is the co-founder of Proudmouth, which I'm sure you'll want to know what that's about. And he's the author of a book with a very illustrious title, Shut the F Up and Listen. And that's what you and I are both about to do. From Michigan, Matt Halloran. Welcome, man. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm going to shut the F up and listen. Tell me all about Proudmouth and why you're passionate about this particular topic.
Yeah, so Proudmouth is we're a podcast, really a content marketing company for highly regulated industries. We've done over 8,500 podcast episodes and about 150,000 social media posts. And we do it for financial advisors as of right now, almost exclusively, which is very, very highly regulated. And here's what happens. So I've done about 1,000 podcasts myself, whether they're our own podcast, the Top Advisor Marketing Podcast, or podcasts with guests. And Scott, I was interviewing this guy. We got done with the podcast, and I went back and listened to it, and I said like 3 sentences the whole show. But at the end of the show, the guy says to me, "Oh my God, that was the best podcast I've ever been on. I really felt like I was heard." I was like, whoa, hold on a second. So what I'm hearing here is if I talk less, my guests feel more engaged and they feel like I'm listening, and it's deepening a huge relationship. It's actually how we've grown our whole business here at Proudmouth, is through our podcast. So there was something there. And in 2007, I wrote my first article called Learning How to Communicate Like Led Zeppelin for a trade pub and financial services. So this has been something I've been passionate about for quite a while.
Well, I'm all ears about how Led Zeppelin communicates, first of all. What's up with that?
Well, there's so many Led Zeppelin songs actually that talk specifically about listening and communicating and connecting. I mean, the whole first album is really about and this is the date. I mean, listen, from a dating perspective, go back and listen to Led Zeppelin 1. You're going to get so much gold, dating gold from that specifically. But anyway.
Hey, what can I do? I got a little woman who won't be true. That's a guy who needs a shoulder to cry on, for sure.
You're damn right it is.
Yeah. Black Dog, Led Zeppelin 4. Oh. I don't know if there's much dating advice in that, but it's a great
song. Probably not, but
I think a lot of guys out there think all women don't have a soul, regardless of the circumstances. But anyway, enough about me. So Proud Mouth is an interesting name for a company that's about listening, because Proud Mouth sounds like I'm happy to listen to myself talk.
Well, so we talk about, so there's a fine line between my day job and writing the book. The book is actually a result of interpersonal training and communication. I was a therapist. My wife and I worked at a place called Boys Town with at-risk teenage boys. I did biomedical ethics consultations at a hospital in Omaha, Nebraska. Proudmouth specifically is built to help financial advisors rise above the noise so that they get heard, really to build a relationship with clients and prospects when it's convenient for the prospect. So when they're sitting in person meetings, the advisor's not talking all the time. So that's really where that gap gets bridged. But they are two pretty distinct things. I just have interviewed so many people in my life. And I met this crazy Canadian guy named Kirk Lowe, who's my business partner. And in 2016, we met, and then 17, we opened Proudmouth. That's the origin story of Proudmouth. But what Proudmouth was meant to do was to fundamentally disrupt financial services because, financial advice has been gate-kept, Scott, forever. If you didn't have $250,000 in investable assets, you never got this advice. And my partner and I, through our company here, has really made financial advice ubiquitous and available to the general public.
Perhaps the ironic truth about human nature is you being quiet and listening sounds incredibly marketable to your customer so that you can teach them how to talk more and be heard better.
And that's really what the whole book's about. The whole book is about knowing really when to talk, Scott. It's not just about sitting passively and being quiet. In fact, what I teach in the book is something called engaged listening, which is like active listening on steroids with intention. And that's why I was so excited when I got the opportunity to come on your show, because if you use some of the skills in the book, especially in the world of dating, you're going to build a relationship so much faster and find out so much more about the person that's sitting across from you at dinner. In fact, Scott, don't let me forget, I've got a great dating exercise that is hands down something that's so much fun to do on dates that will really let you get to know whoever you're on the other side of the table with pretty quick.
Well, don't make me wait. Let's have it.
All right, good. Thank you for letting me talk about this. So when you are on a date, and it can be a first date, it can be a 10th date, it doesn't really matter. But you have to set expectations ahead of time. So when you pick your girlfriend up, right, what you're going to say is you're going to say, okay, we're going to do this exercise that I heard about from this crazy Muppety Santa Claus looking guy on a podcast. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to the restaurant and we're going to sit down. And after we sit down, we're going to choose a couple who is within earshot. And you and I are going to be quiet and we're going to listen to their conversation for the first 10 minutes of our date. Okay, so this is going to put them off their game because they think that, you're going to be doing the same sort of stuff. How's your day? Blah, blah, blah. Nope, that's not what we're doing. So you're going to choose a couple that's in the restaurant. And there's so many layers to why this is so powerful. First off, it forces you to focus on a specific conversation instead of all of the other conversations that's going around. The second thing you're going to do is you're going to answer 3 questions. The first question is, what is the nature of their relationship? So are they on a date? Are they married? Are they breaking up? Are they just friends? Are they brother and sister? Right? The second question that you're gonna tease out is, what do they want from the conversation? And this is where it's so fun to review this with your date afterwards. And then the third one is, who do you think was the dominant person in the conversation? All right. So when you get done with this 10-minute exercise, this is when dinner becomes just so much fun. And so you're your listeners are going to say, okay, hey, what was the nature of the nature of the relationship? And you get to see how they listen compared to how you listen. And it is so telling, Scott, on how you can really know the person that you're on a date with by finding out how they listen and what they're listening for.
My wife and I, over the years we've been together, have been subject to listening to another couple on a date by force majeure before. And sometimes it has been quite interesting. But you know what? Almost always it's painful.
Yeah, it can be. Instead of being on a double date, you don't have to do this at dinner too. In fact, one of my favorite things to do is have this actually be done at a coffee shop, because at dinner you generally are sitting opposite of each other from the table. When you're at a coffee shop, what you want to do is you actually want to sit side by side. So if you're in a booth in a restaurant, don't have your date sit across from you. Have them sit next to you so that you can go through this exercise. It also allows you to not get distracted by your date because they're sitting right next to you. But what's also a lot of fun, Scott, is a lot of times when I've had people do this exercise, your date or whoever you're with will like grab onto your leg and be like, oh my God, did you hear that? And you're like, no, you're not supposed to talk yet. And so it's a wonderful relationship building opportunity, but it really tells you a lot about your partner.
I'd like to throw a +1 at the dating advice of sitting next to your date instead of across from her. And I don't think this has ever come up. So bravo.
Oh,
for perhaps accidentally stumbling upon the concept more from a dating and attraction perspective rather than simply a communicative one. But yeah, you're sitting across the table, you're face to face. It feels adversarial. It feels like we're going to have to negotiate or come up with an agreement when we're sitting across from someone. But when you're sitting next to them, like at a sushi bar or like, Buffalo Wild Wings has this big long bar where you can sit. My wife and I still do that. We go out, we'll sit at the bar together because you can be tactile. You can be a little bit closer, look each other in the eyes, right, and notice that she smells good. And the next thing you know, she's touching your leg and patting you on the shoulder. And it's all very, very serendipitous. And I think a lot of guys, it never occurs to them to do that.
It's so much more intimate.
Yeah, I think it's good, solid dating advice. I think it's as close to a pure tactic that I'll probably be able to throw down on a show like this. Because of course I don't believe in, easy buttons and tricks and, canned lines and stuff. But that is a very, very simple strategy that I think most guys can do. I love what you're saying because it puts you in listening mode with each other. I think the stereotype is that guys get on dates and they're trying to impress the girl and talk about themselves and brag about what they're doing. There's a commercial that's been coming on during the football games where a guy is doing this just horribly and the woman excuses herself from a date like within a minute. And well, guys who are watching football learn from that now. Probably they'll say, oh, that sick, poor bastard. I'd never be anything like that. And then meanwhile, they'll go on their next date and be exactly like that because we think the woman has to be impressed by us. The woman's nervous if she's on a first date. What she needs from us is something that makes her feel safe about her appearance and who she is and whether we even like her. My favorite 3 words on a first date is somewhere 5 or 10 minutes in just to blurt out, I like you. Because it's so simple. And we as men try to complicate things so much. But this act of listening as a first step, I think is kind of revolutionary. And my first thought, I got to admit, Matt, is like, well, what if you don't have a couple within earshot? Well, I mean, you could even say, what do you think our waiter is like? What do you think he does when he's not on the clock? And, I've actually done this when I'm out to lunch with other guys with a waitress. And then when the waitress comes back, I said, what if I told you I know something about you just because you waited on us at lunch? Would that creep you out or can I tell you? And 100% of the time she's like, oh, no, tell me. Because, women love this stuff. And it won't be a cold read. I'll say something that I've observed and she'll think I'm a Swami or something who has this miraculous mind reading power, but we were just observant. And the art of being observant, that's what listening is predicated upon, isn't it?
Dude, absolutely, man. It's exactly what it's about. And you just highlighted something that is so flippin' important, dude, which is people like to know that you're noticing.
Right.
On a date, especially, I want to go back because as a person who's studied communication for a long time, when you're sitting right next to your wife, I don't want it to go unnoticed that you talked about some specific things that you can only do when you're sitting right next to your date. You can tell how they're, if they smell good or not. You are in much, much closer proximity. It is not adversarial like you're about to play a game of chess, right? Or ping pong or tennis or sport, any sort of sport, right? It is, we're going to sit together and do this together on a date. But one of the greatest things that you can do when your wait staff comes by, if there isn't another couple in earshot, have your wait staff come by, ask them a question. What do you do outside of work? And just let them talk, because they will talk, because nobody ever asks the waiters or waitresses any questions. And then when you get done, that's when you can start doing the exercise. Okay, so let's try to figure out, are they dating anybody? Are they, what did we learn from that little bit of information? And it becomes something collaborative that you're doing with your date. And I'm telling your listeners right now, you are going to find out more about the person you're sitting next to by doing these exercises than you can on 10 dates.
Not to be overlooked in the context you're talking about of being at a restaurant and having a waitress. If a waitress starts volunteering information about her personal life and what she does after hours, and if she starts asking you about yours, she's potentially interested in you. She's not just being a hired gun, because waitresses won't ask people about that stuff.
No, they don't.
If you ask her, it could telegraph to her that you're interested in her outside of work hours. But the beauty of it is it's kind of what I call a half step. You're not saying, hey, I think you're hot. Give me your number. Let's go out. You're kind of testing the waters a little, sticking your toe in the pool before jumping in, lest you feel embarrassed if she goes, I have a boyfriend, or you're an ugly little twit. Just eat your lunch and shut up. You don't have that risk by asking her that. You're keeping it social. I love it. I have to ask you, have you ever watched a show on Netflix called The Queen's Gambit?
Yes, I have.
Okay. A lot of people have. It kind of flew under the radar, won lots of Emmys. Great show. And if you're a chess enthusiast, or even if you're not, especially if you're a chess enthusiast, however, you'll love the show, because the show is about a young woman who is a chess prodigy and becomes world champion. It's based on a novel, in basically a men's world. And the great thing about that show is she's somewhat popular with her chess playing male peers romantically. And indeed, something I'm just now realizing, having watched, every season of the show and enjoyed it with my wife and my son, every one of her relationships with men in that show were very tactical and strategic. It was like a face-off. It was like an adversarial standoff just to have a conversation. And, of course, they were always playing chess, kind of got erotically turned on by playing chess with each other. So in a way, it was a weird show, but it's the first thing I thought of when you were speaking of sitting across the table with someone, and this is like a negotiation or some kind of battle to see who checkmates the other one first, right? Mm-hmm. And you kind of want to knock over the ketchup bottle when you say checkmate or something, because, ketchup's the king of the table, right? But I digress. I think this is a very interesting conversation with lots of golden nuggets. Here's where I want to take it next. Women think almost every man doesn't know how to listen, and they're all looking for a man who listens. And I think a lot of guys hear a woman say that and interpret it as she wants me to obey her.
Oh.
Because that's how our male mind is wired. It's a power struggle, right? It's win, lose, black, white, no gray area. No camaraderie necessarily here just yet. I got to somehow make this woman accept me rather than rejecting me, wins and losses, binaries, ones and zeros. And yet what women, I believe, are really requesting of us is that we stop and find out what our hopes and loves and dreams and fears, etc., are, so that we can lead, so we can be men and provide and protect. Because if we aim at nothing, we're going to hit it every time. So unless we know what's on her mind and what she's feeling, how can we man up? Do you think I'm onto something there, or would you interpret that differently?
Dude, you just said there's so much stuff to unpack there from my perspective.
Good. That was my intention. Go for it.
So two things. The first one is, I think men fail in relationships because they think it's binary. I think that is one of the biggest failures that men have, is they think things are right and wrong and black and white. There's a great song by a band named Live called The Beauty of Gray. Now I'm dating myself there. That's not a new song in any way, shape, or form. But, I'd love for your listeners to go back and listen to the song, because the chorus is, we don't live in a black and white world. The colors all swirl. It's the beauty of gray. And so I really definitely think that that's important. But The other thing that you just said there is one of the greatest things. So I've been married for 25 years to my wife. And one of the greatest things I ever learned was to ask her the question, do you want me to listen or listen to solve a problem?
Exactly.
And dude, 90% of the time, my wife just wants to know that she's being heard. And we are so quick to try to solve problems that aren't problems for us to fix. And I think that that is true partnership. And I think that is truly getting in touch with what it really means to be a man is I am going to be there for you when you need me, but that doesn't mean you always need me in that way.
My wife has a penchant for doing that when the Ravens are driving with 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter. That's where my fatal flaw is. You know, honey, 10 minutes from now when this game is over, I'm all ears. But right now, I'm just a little bit preoccupied. You know what I mean? I'm being slightly facetious, but not really. Women have no field sense for when a guy is ready to listen or when he's had a crappy day or when we're just not in the mood for it. Women expect us to snap to it and be ready when they are. And I think that's something that's well chronicled in the annals of dating and relationship advice. And so, I mean, I think it's a lot of pressure on guys just to shut up and listen when necessary, although I think that would be wonderful and heroic of us. But yeah, I mean, I think the secret to this is communication. Some days we're going to have a bad day. Some days we're going to have a bad moment. Some days it's her turn. She's in a bad moment. But the crux of the matter is, indeed, like you said, she doesn't want us to fix anything. It's not like this is an emergency and we have to drop everything and fix it. Sometimes she just needs an ear. And so we can choke it up for a second and listen to her. And if we're having our own drama we're going through.
Huh.
Well, and what I'm saying there is, I mean, we're all human.
Well, I agree that we're all human. I have found that after, practicing engaged listening for the years that I've practiced it, I prefer it. I would prefer, in fact, Scott, we didn't really talk about this when we were getting to know each other before you hit record, but I'm usually on your side of the microphone. I'm usually not on this side of the microphone where I'm the one doing most of the talking. My happy place is actually listening. My grandmother said something, and this is the opening line of the book, which is, Matt, you have 2 ears and one mouth. You should listen twice as much as you talk. But the other quote that I absolutely love is, one does not ever learn anything while talking. You only learn while you're listening. And I think that level of self-awareness and being comfortable, Scott, in that level of uncomfortableness, which a lot of times listening is uncomfortable, is an unbelievably powerful stance to take. And I think that ticks all of the boxes of modern masculinity. When you are comfortable enough of sitting in your own silence and being present and there for your partner, I think that's flipping huge, dude.
Well, I wouldn't disagree with you. I guess I'm just a little sensitive to men having a lot of pressure on themselves to be perfect and to be flawless, lest this beautiful woman is going to reject us and run away. Because that's a kind of a fable a lot of guys are told, that, women hold all the power in relationships. And if you screw up even once, she's going to find someone who's richer and taller and has a bigger penis and run away with them. And I guess it's unreasonable to expect a guy's going to come home from a work day where his boss has yelled at him and he, got shot at if he's a police officer or something like that. And as soon as he walks in the door hoping to decompress, the wife loads on him with, listen to my day and I've got this problem and just be present for me right now. There's got to be a little give and take in the relationship. What comes to mind is another TV show we've been enjoying lately called Landman, where Billy Bob Thornton's character is faced with impossibly violent, complex, fraught situations all day long. And his high maintenance wife, who's played beautifully, by the way, by Ali Larter, just doesn't seem to get that. She wants to bend his ear about the new shoes she bought today. And he's like, honey, can we please talk about this later? And he's like bleeding from, having been beaten up by a cartel guy. And she still just wants him to listen and pouts and stuff like that. So I guess what I'm advocating for here is that we as men can forgive ourselves if we're not in the mood, but we should strive to be able to listen to our wives. And it's always about balance. I mean, I think women need to do things for us too. Sometimes we need to be heard. Sometimes we just need a back rub. Sometimes they just need to shut up and let us drink a beer and watch our game, for God's sake. But there's always that little ballet dance between men and women, right?
Well, I wholeheartedly agree. And I think that's what a good partnership is. And I also do believe that setting expectations. So this is one of the things that we learned when we worked at Boys Town with all of these really troubled boys was if you actually set clear expectations before it escalates into any level of frustration, a simple text on your way home, Scott, to your girlfriend and say, hey, listen, I had a really, really rough day today. When I get home, can I just have 15 minutes of just quiet time where I just kind of go, to my whatever your safe place is, or your neutral place, or your whatever, play video games or whatever, in order to go ahead and decompress. And then I'll be more than happy to chat. I have found that people rise to those expectations pretty quickly if they're set ahead of time. One of the things that I was a marriage counselor, Scott, for a number of years, which is the worst job I've ever had in my life. And most of the time I would hear, well, she should know that, or he should know that. And I'm like, did you ever tell them that? Well, they should just know. No, you should talk to them about it. And I think that's great in the world of dating too, dude.
It's funny. I was just on a summit that was 95% women. And I was talking about how both men and women need to feel safe in a relationship, not just the woman. And the question on the table from the audience was, what can I say to the man in my life to make him feel safe? And another lady barged in and answered, well, men need to know when we don't feel safe. And men need to know how they can make us feel safer. And men need to be told very clearly what it is that's making us feel scared. And I said, well, that was very wonderful, but can I chime in here as a guy? Telling a guy you don't feel safe doesn't make me feel safe. It informs me that you don't feel safe. The question on the table is, what can you say to a man to make him feel safe? And that response on my part didn't compute to the woman.
Wow.
Isn't that something?
That is, and what a beautiful question to be asked of you, in my opinion, in that forum.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I think the cautionary tale there is a lot of dating advice nowadays, and you probably know this based on your experience, is telling both men and women, respective dating advice for women and men, that here's how to get what you want from another person. Not only just have the mindset of being transactional in a relationship, what do I get out of this? But also stop having regard for whatever the other person is going to get out of this. They don't matter. They're a robot. You just get what you want out of them, and then there's your relationship. And of course, a transactional relationship is BS to begin with. That's not going to go anywhere. And meanwhile, no one who's a real red-blooded human being, if they're of sound mind and sound conscience and has any sense of self-respect, is going to get into a relationship where they just give you what you want, right? So it's amazing to me how it's so ingrained in our conscience nowadays that there should be an easy button. What do I say? All right, fine. He doesn't feel safe. Give me 2 simple words that makes him love me and give me his credit card and stop watching porn. And that just is unreasonable. I mean, the closest is if a woman says to a man, you're amazing, after he does something for her or makes her feel safe. That would make me feel great. But we're so inclined to just try to get off the hook with as little work as possible, but we really need to stop, take actual real time, and care about another actual real person on the other side there, and listen. And it does need to be a two-way street, and we need to take care of each other in that regard.
I agree with every flippin' thing you just said there, dude. I mean, look at your relationship. I mean, you and I have both been married for a really long time.
For sure.
When we got married, and I can't speak for you, but I can speak for myself, I was looking for a partner, dude. I wasn't looking for a transactional relationship. I was looking with somebody who was going to be on this journey with me. And I was 25 when I met my wife. And before I was 25, dude, I made every dating mistake you could ever imagine. And I'm sure you've heard great stories about all of those. But then when I really try to figure out, hey, I actually want to find somebody who, ticks all of these boxes. But the problem is I never knew what those boxes were before I met my wife. And then as I was preparing, honestly, to meet my wife, I actually created those boxes. I wanted to know what I was really looking for, because what I was doing wasn't working. And 25 years later, brother, I've got twin 21-year-old boys who are absolutely fantastic, and I love them dearly. My wife is one of my favorite people in the world to spend time with. And so, but I think it begins on the front end. And I think a lot of people go into dating in that adversarial relationship, that chess game, that I'm going to get what I want and maybe give you what you want. I just think that's a bad place to start.
Yeah, and it's not about listening, for sure. Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, we're out of time. His name is Matt Halloran. He's the co-founder of Proudmouth. The name of his book is Shut the F Up and Listen. And when you go to mountaintoppodcast.com/Amazon and you're listening to this show within about a week or so of its release, you'll find Matt Halloran's book at the top of the Amazon influencer queue right there for you. It's a good book. You should check it out. Also, when you go to mountaintoppodcast.com/Matt, M-A-T-T, can you believe it? After 400 and some episodes, we've never had a Matt on before. You will be teleported magically to matthalloran.com. And what will guys find when they get there, Matt?
They'll find out more about the book, find a little bit more about me, and if they're interested in hiring me as a speaker or getting on my mailing list to find more about tips about how to listen better.
Yeah, great stuff. Great stuff. Matt Halloran, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a really fun conversation with lots of really new insights in it. And, man, I know the guys really appreciate that. So thank you. I hope you'll come back on.
I'd love to. Thanks for the opportunity, Scott.
Yeah, man, for sure. And gentlemen, head on over to mountaintoppodcast.com. Check out our three main sponsors. Origin in Maine, that's Jocko Willink's company. Also Hero Soap and the Keyport. And when you get anything from our longtime sponsors, please use the coupon code MOUNTAIN10 to get an additional 10% off. Also, when you go to mountaintoppodcast.com, download the free book, Sticking Points Solved. That's yours absolutely free. I took emails from dozens of you guys covering a vast cross-section of ways to get better as a man and with women, and I answered each and every one of them in detail. That book is there for you for free at mountaintoppodcast.com, along with so much more. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X&Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.